On my 64th birthday, my daughter Clara handed me a bottle of memory support pills, saying my mind was starting to go. She even canceled my doctor's appointment, claiming it wasn't necessary. I simply nodded, but a cold determination settled deep within me. She had no idea how clearly I was truly seeing. I'm so glad you're here. Follow my story until the end, like, share, and let me know the city you're listening from. At 64, my world had begun to tilt in subtle, unsettling ways. It started with small things, misplacing my reading glasses, forgetting a word mid-sentence, leaving the kettle to boil dry on the stove. But then the incidents grew more alarming, more disruptive, chipping away at my sense of self. My independence, once a sturdy oak, now felt like a sapling buffeted by an unseen wind. One morning, the panic was a cold hand gripping my heart. I woke up, not in my comfortable bed, but lying on the damp grass of my own backyard, clad only in a thin nightgown. The morning dew chilled my skin, and the first rays of sunlight felt like spotlights exposing a horrifying secret. How did I get there? Why couldn't I remember walking out? A knot of fear tightened in my stomach. Later that day, when my daughter Clara called for our usual morning chat, I tried to make light of it, though my voice trembled slightly. Clara, you won't believe what happened this morning. I woke up in the backyard, just there. I even tried a nervous laugh, hoping it would make the absurdity less terrifying. There was a pause on the other end, a silence that felt heavy and knowing. Oh, Mom, she sighed, a familiar note of weary concern in her tone. It's just, you're getting older. These things happen. Her voice softened, but the words felt like tiny blows. Your mind is starting to go, isn't it? We've talked about this. I wanted to protest, to argue that this was more than just getting older, but the words felt trapped behind a thick pane of glass. I just listened as she continued, her voice gaining a solicitous edge. I've been doing some research, Mom. There's this amazing new memory support complex, all natural, packed with vitamins. I've ordered a bottle for you. It'll really help. The package arrived 2 days later, a small, unassuming white bottle with a bright blue label declaring Memory Support Complex, Enhanced Brain Health and Cognitive Function. Inside, nestled in cotton, were 20 small, intensely blue pills. They looked innocent enough, yet a flicker of unease danced in my periphery. Take one with breakfast every morning, Mom, Clara instructed over the phone, her voice bright and reassuring. You'll feel sharper in no time. Promise for Honda. The next morning, I stared at the blue pill in the palm of my hand. It was slightly larger than I expected, and it had a faint chemical smell. With a glass of water, I swallowed it. The taste was faintly bitter, leaving a strange aftertaste that lingered on my tongue. I tried to shake off the vague sense of foreboding. Clara meant well, I told myself. She was worried about me. A week passed, and the pills became a ritual. Each morning, the same blue capsule, the same bitter aftertaste. I expected to feel clearer, sharper, as Clara had promised. Instead, a peculiar mental fog began to descend. It wasn't the scatterbrain confusion I'd experienced before, but a different kind of haze, a dullness that settled over my thoughts. Retrieving memories felt like wading through thick mud. Conversations seemed to echo, their meaning just out of reach. When I tentatively mentioned it to Clara, hoping for some reassurance, her response was swift and dismissive. Mom, it's just the condition getting worse. The vitamins are there to slow it down, not reverse it overnight. You need to be patient. There was an almost imperceptible shift in her tone, a firmness that hadn't been there before. What was the condition? I hadn't been diagnosed with anything. We had only discussed getting older. A few more days bled into each other, each one marked by the blue pill and the deepening fog. I felt increasingly sluggish, my concentration fragmented. My once sharp mind felt like a dull pencil, unable to form coherent thoughts. I don't think these vitamins are helping, Clara, I said one afternoon, struggling to articulate the growing heaviness in my head. I feel cloudier. Clara's voice was tight, impatient. Mom, they're not just vitamins. They're medication, a complex designed to support your brain. You have to give them time. It's not a magic bullet, but it's crucial you keep taking them. The word medication struck me with the force of a physical blow. not vitamins anymore. The sudden, unannounced shift in terminology sent a shiver down my spine. Why the change? Had she always thought of them as medication? Was I taking something without fully understanding what it was? My mind, heavy and thick like molasses, struggled to process this new information. Yet, despite the growing mental sluggishness, a deep, persistent gut instinct began to stir within me. It was a faint whisper at first, then a growing thrum beneath the dull ache of my confusion. These pills, this medication, were wrong, terribly wrong, and Clara, my own daughter, was somehow at the heart of it. The bell chimed softly, a welcome sound in the increasingly silent house. I opened the door to find Mrs. Albright, my kind, observant neighbor, standing on my porch with a casserole dish in her hands. Her brow was furrowed with a familiar concern that warmed something cold inside me. "Eleanor, dear," she began, her voice gentle, "I saw you out in the driveway yesterday. You looked a little disoriented. Are you all right?" I felt a blush creep up my neck. The memory of standing there, key in hand, staring blankly at my own front door, was fresh and humiliating. "Oh, just a moment of distraction, Martha," I mumbled, trying to wave it off, though the fog in my head made even that small deception feel like an effort. My mind just wandered for a bit. Before Mrs. Albright could respond, a sleek black BMW purred to a stop in front of the house. Clara, she emerged, a picture of elegant efficiency in a tailored suit, a confident smile on her lips that seemed to freeze when she saw Mrs. Albright. Her smile tightened, becoming a practiced, solicitous expression. "Mrs. Albright, what a lovely surprise," Clara chirped, striding up the path, instantly taking control of the situation. Her arm slipped around my shoulders, a gesture that felt less like affection and more like ownership. "Mom was just telling me about her little walkabout. It's nothing to worry about. We're getting her all sorted, Mrs." Albright's eyes, however, still held that glimmer of worry. "She seemed quite lost, Clara. I was truly concerned." Clara squeezed my shoulder, her voice dropping to a confidential tone that somehow carried across the small porch. "Oh, we know. That's why we're seeing Dr. Hayes. He's been invaluable with her memory issues." My mind, though clouded, bristled. Dr. Hayes? I hadn't seen a doctor, not for months. Certainly not about my memory. My last appointment had been for a routine checkup, and Clara herself had insisted on canceling the follow-up, claiming stress and loneliness were the real culprits. Yet there she was, speaking with such conviction. "We're working with her doctor," she reiterated, as if to cement the lie in Mrs. Albright's mind and mine. Clara then turned to Mrs. Albright, her smile unwavering but with an underlying steeliness. "We really appreciate your concern, Mrs. Albright. But Dr. Hayes has advised us that too much stimulation can actually make the confusion worse. We're trying to keep things calm and structured for Mom right now. Best for her to rest." The dismissal was polite, almost charming, but unmistakable. Mrs. Albright, bless her kind heart, seemed to understand. Her face fell a little, but she nodded. "Of course, dear. Whatever's best for Eleanor. Just let me know if you need anything." She placed the casserole dish on my small table, just inside the door, offering a gentle squeeze of my hand before departing. Her eyes, though, lingered on me with a quiet sadness, a silent question I couldn't answer. As soon as Mrs. Albright's car was out of sight, Clara's demeanor shifted. The professional smile vanished, replaced by a scrutinizing gaze directed at the small blue bottle on my kitchen counter. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the label. Then she opened the cap and peered inside as if counting the remaining pills. "You've been taking these every morning, right, Mom? No missed doses?" Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory. The sudden intensity, coupled with the lingering bitterness of the last pill and the lingering disquiet from her conversation with Mrs. Albright, caused a strange lurch in my head. My vision blurred for a moment, and I swayed, grabbing onto the counter for support. A dizzy spell. It wasn't just the fog anymore. It was a physical response, a warning. That night, sleep was a distant luxury. Despite the heavy cloak of confusion, my mind raced, darting between the unsettling events of the day. Mrs. Albright's genuine concern contrasted sharply with Clara's swift, almost practiced intervention. The lie about Dr. Hayes, Clara's subtle yet firm discouragement of visitors, and the way my symptoms seemed to be worsening, not improving, after taking those bitter blue pills. It was all a swirling vortex, a nascent suspicion taking root in the fertile ground of my growing fear. I started noticing other things. Clara, ever so subtly, had begun to document my confused moments. Sometimes I'd catch her with her phone, ostensibly checking messages, but the camera lens would be pointed in my direction. Other times, she'd make a quick note in a small, leather-bound planner. When I questioned her, she'd offer the same saccharine explanation. "It's for Dr. Hayes, Mom. He wants a detailed record of your progress," or setbacks. The word setbacks hung in the air, heavy and loaded. A few days later, while Clara was supposedly on a work call in the living room, I overheard snippets of her conversation, clearly meant for Mrs. Albright. "Yes, she misplaced her keys again this morning. Insisted the mailman was a stranger trying to get into the house. You know, the usual." My blood ran cold. I hadn't done any of those things. Not that morning, not ever. Clara was fabricating incidents, weaving a narrative of accelerating decline. For what purpose? Then Mrs. Albright made another attempt to visit, bringing fresh-baked cookies this time. My heart ached for her kindness, but Clara was quick to intercept her at the door, her voice pitched low, but clear enough for me to overhear from the kitchen. "It's getting more challenging, Mrs. Albright," Clara said, a manufactured sigh in her voice. "We're starting to think about other living arrangements. You know, somewhere she can get more specialized care." A pause, then a chilling whisper. "It's progressing faster than we expected." Progressing faster than expected. The words echoed in my head, stripped of their supposed sympathy, revealing a grotesque implication. It wasn't just the condition worsening naturally. It was as if Clara wanted it to progress, as if she were a gardener observing a plant she had carefully cultivated. Later that afternoon, Clara, armed with a clipboard and a stern, analytical expression, began systematically moving through my house. She inspected the kitchen, identifying potential tripping hazards in my rug. She pointed out the steepness of the stairs, the outdated fixtures in the bathroom, the loose handrail on the porch. Each observation was delivered with the dispassionate tone of an auditor, cataloging my home as if it were a property to be assessed, not a sanctuary where I had lived in love for decades. I watched her, a ghost in my own home, feeling like nothing more than an object, a problem to be solved. My very existence stripped of agency and dignity. The mental fog was a constant companion now, a thick, damp blanket over my thoughts. Yet beneath it, a tiny flicker of defiance sparked. Clara had mentioned something about a phone call, a 3 a.m. distress call I supposedly made. It gnawed at me. I couldn't recall it, but the unease of her claim festered. "Claire," I began one morning, my voice thin, pushing through the dense confusion. "You said I called you at 3 in the morning the other night. What was it about?" Clara, busy chopping vegetables for a meal she insisted I hadn't eaten enough of, paused. She turned, her expression one of practiced sympathy. "Oh, Mom, you were just disoriented. Said you didn't know where you were. It happens." She shook her head sadly. "This disease, it just steals your memories, doesn't it?" My heart gave a sickening lurch. "Disease? What disease, Clara?" She looked at me with a pained expression, as if I were deliberately trying her patience. "Early onset dementia, Mom. We've talked about this, remember? Dr. Hayes confirmed it. We've been through this several times. The words hit me like a physical blow. Early onset dementia. No, never. My mind, despite its current state, recoiled. This was the first time I had ever heard that specific, terrifying phrase directed at me. There was no memory of a conversation, no memory of a diagnosis, no memory of Dr. Hayes confirming anything of the sort. I would remember that. Surely, even in this fog, such a devastating pronouncement would leave an indelible mark. "I don't remember talking about dementia, Clara," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. She sighed, a sound of long-suffering patience. "Mom, you forget a lot of things these days. It's part of the condition. I've taken you to 3 top neurologists, including Dr. Hayes. They all agreed, every one of them." She paused, her eyes softening, but a subtle edge of steel remained in her voice. "I wouldn't lie to you about something so serious, Mom. You know that. But I didn't know that. A cold shiver ran down my spine. 3 top neurologists? I hadn't seen any neurologists. The complete blankness in my memory regarding such significant events felt increasingly suspicious. Clara had started staying overnight more often, ostensibly to help me. She'd arrive with bags of groceries, insisting on cooking elaborate meals because I forgot to eat. Her presence became a constant, suffocating shadow, reinforcing the narrative of my incapacity. She'd hover, observing my every move, making notes on her phone, all for Dr. Hayes. One afternoon, while tidying up the kitchen, Clara spoke, her voice light, almost casual, yet the words plunged a dagger into my heart. I've been looking at some lovely facilities, Mom, places specializing in memory care. They have beautiful gardens, activities. You'd be very happy there. Somewhere you could get 24/7 care, tailored to your needs. My blood ran cold. Facilities, memory care. They were euphemisms for a nursing home, a place where I would be stripped of my autonomy, my home, my life. This was her goal. This was what all the lies, the vitamins, the fabricated incidents were leading to. A surge of anger, sharp and clear, cut through the fog. I want to see these doctors, Clara, I demanded, my voice stronger than I expected, laced with a desperation that startled even myself. I want to hear it from them, from Dr. Hayes. I want to know exactly what's wrong with me, and I want to see their reports. Clara turned, her face a mask of gentle pity. Mom, you're not in a state to be going to appointments. You get confused easily. Besides, I handle all your medical appointments now. It's for your own good. Dr. Hayes has explained everything to me. You really wouldn't understand it all anyway, given your condition. She used the term your condition like a weapon, a dismissive label to silence any questions. Later that day, while she thought I was napping in my armchair, I overheard her talking on the phone upstairs. Her voice was low, conspiratorial, yet clear in the otherwise silent house. Yes, it's getting much worse, she whispered. The decline is accelerating. I think we need to move faster than we planned. Moving faster than we planned. The words echoed in my mind, stark and terrifying. They weren't just words. They were a chilling premonition, a horrifying confirmation of the sinister purpose behind her actions. A single terrifying thought, sharp and undeniable, pierced through the molasses of my brain. What if Clara was lying? What if this wasn't dementia? What if my own daughter was poisoning me? The idea was monstrous, unthinkable, a betrayal that tore at the very fabric of my being. But the evidence, though subtle, was mounting. The worsening symptoms, the fabricated stories, the sudden shift in vitamins to medication, the veiled threats of facilities. It all coalesced into a horrifying picture. In that moment of clarity, a decision solidified in my mind, cold and firm. Tomorrow, I would not take the blue pill. The next morning, the absence of the pill was a strange, subtle sensation. I felt a faint lightness, a minuscule lifting of the foul. It was enough to give me a flicker of hope. Perhaps I wasn't losing my mind after all. Perhaps this was the answer, but by noon, a new kind of terror began to set in. A tremor started in my hands, a subtle shaking that intensified with each passing hour. My head throbbed, and waves of dizziness washed over me, making the room spin. My stomach churned with nausea, and a pervasive anxiety tightened its grip. These weren't symptoms of clarity. They were symptoms of withdrawal. A tiny, insidious voice whispered in my mind, what if you're wrong? What if this is your dementia, just getting worse without the medication? What if you're making a terrible mistake? The decision to stop taking the blue pill, born of pure terror and a spark of defiant clarity, had immediate and unsettling consequences. The first day had been a torment of withdrawal. My hands shook uncontrollably, a tremor that made even holding a teacup a challenge. Waves of nausea crashed over me, leaving me weak and disoriented. And the dizziness was relentless, blurring my vision and making every step feel precarious. It was a brutal reminder of how deeply the pills had affected my system. A part of me, the one still steeped in confusion, whispered doubts. Is this truly the poison leaving your body? Or is it the dementia accelerating, just as Clara warned? But as the second day progressed, something subtle yet profound began to shift. The debilitating physical symptoms, though still present, lessened slightly. More importantly, the thick, heavy curtain that had shrouded my mind for weeks began to lift, ever so slowly. It was like watching a dense fog dissipate at sunrise, revealing faint outlines then sharper details. Memories, once elusive and fragmented, started to coalesce. The conversations with Mrs. Albright, Clara's knowing glances, the chilling phone call I'd overheard, they replayed with startling clarity. A quiet, furious resolve settled deep within me. This wasn't dementia. This was something else entirely, something orchestrated. On Thursday morning, a sliver of hope sparked in my chest. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fierce determination to uncover the truth. I made my way to the kitchen, intending to brew a strong cup of coffee, a small act of defiance against the lingering weakness. The aroma of freshly ground beans filled the air, a familiar comfort. I reached for my favorite mug, a chipped ceramic piece from a family vacation long ago, and for a moment, I felt almost like myself again. Then, without warning, a dizzy spell unlike any I had experienced before seized me. It wasn't a gentle sway, it was a sudden, violent lurch, as if the floor had dropped out from under me. My head swam, the kitchen spinning into a chaotic blur of colors and shapes. The mug slipped from my grasp, shattering with a sharp crack that seemed to echo into infinity. A wave of profound weakness washed over me, draining every ounce of strength from my limbs. My knees buckled, and I felt myself falling, powerless, helpless. The cold linoleum rushed up to meet me, and then everything went black. I woke to a harsh, artificial brightness. The air smelled of antiseptic and something faintly metallic. My head throbbed, and a dull ache radiated from my arm, where an IV drip snaked into my vein. The room was sterile, white, utterly unfamiliar. A hospital. Panic flared, a cold, sharp blade. My eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus. To my left, by the side of the bed, stood Clara. She was speaking in hushed, earnest tones to a man in a white coat. Her voice, usually so composed, was laced with what sounded like genuine concern, a practiced tremor. "Her condition has been progressively worse, doctor," Clara was saying, her back partially to me. "These episodes, where she doesn't even recognize where she is, they're becoming more frequent. She's been so disoriented, falling. It's heartbreaking to watch." A white-hot rage flared in my chest. Liar. Every word was a calculated fabrication. I tried to speak, to refute her insidious lies, but my throat was parched, my voice a raspy groan, barely audible. Clara, hearing the faint sound, turned sharply. Her eyes widened, and a gasp escaped her lips. She quickly fumbled in her purse for a tissue, dabbing delicately at her eyes as if overwhelmed with emotion. "Oh, Mom, you're awake! Thank goodness!" She rushed to my side, her touch on my forehead strangely cool and distant. "You gave us such a fright." The doctor, a kind-faced man with a reassuring demeanor, stepped forward. "Mrs. Eleanor," he began, his voice calm and professional. "I'm Dr. Bennett. You're at St. Mary's Hospital. You've been unconscious for about 2 days." 2 days. 2 entire days of my life, gone, vanished into a void. The lost time was a terrifying revelation, a gaping hole in my existence. It fueled the panic that clawed at me, but also intensified my resolve. My mind, despite the lingering weakness, felt clearer, sharper than it had in months. The fog had thinned considerably, revealing the landscape of Clara's deception with stark clarity. "We're running some tests, Mrs. Eleanor," Dr. Bennett continued, "to understand the cause of your unexplained loss of consciousness. It's important we get to the bottom of this." "My pills," I rasped, the words surprisingly distinct. "The blue ones. Did you bring them, Clara?" I watched her, my eyes narrowed, eager to see her reaction. Clara's face was a study in feigned relief. "Of course, Mom. They're right here. I made sure to bring them from home. Dr. Hayes said it was crucial you continue taking them, so I've been giving them to you while you were resting." She held up the familiar blue bottle, a sinister trophy in her hand. "You need to keep taking them, Mom. They're helping." "Hayes," I repeated, my voice growing stronger with each word. the indignation giving me an unexpected surge of energy. I need to speak to Dr. Hayes now. What's his number? Clara's composure faltered, her smile tightened, and her eyes darted nervously between me and Dr. Bennett. Oh, Mom, he's a very busy man. I don't just have his direct line on me. Besides, you've just woken up. We can call him later. She waved a dismissive hand, attempting to brush off my request. But I wasn't to be brushed off. The clarity in my mind, though still fragile, was a powerful force. No, I want to call him now. I have a right to speak to my doctor. Bring me my purse, Clara. It's at home. My phone is in it. I'll call him myself. I fixed my gaze on her, an unspoken challenge in my eyes. I knew she wouldn't want me to get my hands on my phone or anything else that might connect me to the outside world, to the truth. Her hesitation, her evasiveness, confirmed every horrifying suspicion. If you're finding this story as unsettling as I am, please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single part. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let's unravel this mystery together. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room seemed to amplify every sound, every whisper, every thought. The morning arrived, heavy with an unspoken tension. I waited, my heart a frantic bird in my chest, for Dr. Bennett. He entered, his kind face now etched with a serious, almost grim expression. He held a tablet in his hand, his eyes scanning the screen before meeting mine. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanors," he said, his voice softer than usual. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," I replied, the word feeling profoundly true, despite the lingering weakness. "Much clearer." He nodded, a thoughtful frown on his face. "That's good to hear. We received some of your test results this morning. Before we discuss those, could you confirm for me, what medications are you currently taking?" I didn't hesitate. The fog was gone, replaced by a crystalline memory. "Only the blue pills, doctor, for memory support. My daughter Clara brings them to me every day." I watched his face carefully, searching for a reaction, for any clue. Dr. Bennett's gaze sharpened. He tapped at the tablet screen a few times, then looked directly at me, his voice grave. "Mrs. Eleanor, your blood work shows elevated levels of several substances. Substances that are definitely not found in standard memory support vitamins. Specifically, we've detected significant levels of sedatives in your system." The words hung in the air, cold and hard, a hammer blow to my fragile recovery. Sedatives, not vitamins. Sedatives. The room spun, not from dizziness this time, but from the sudden, horrifying clarity of the truth. It slammed into me with the force of a tidal wave, washing away the last vestiges of denial. The mental fog, the confusion, the inexplicable collapses, the lost days, it wasn't dementia. It was the pills. It was the sedatives. And Clara, my own daughter, had been giving them to me. "That's impossible," I whispered, the words barely audible. My daughter wouldn't. But even as I said them, the pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and meaningless, began to snap into place with terrifying precision. The fabricated incidents, the lies about Dr. Hayes, the rapid decline, the talk of facilities, the withdrawal symptoms when I stopped taking them, it all pointed to one monstrous, undeniable conclusion. Just then the door opened, and Clara walked in, a small overnight bag slung over her shoulder. Her expression was a picture of weary concern, a performance perfected over weeks. In her hand, clutched almost protectively, was the familiar small white bottle with its bright blue label. "Good morning, Mom, Dr. Bennett," she chirped, her voice falsely bright. She placed the bag and the bottle on my bedside table, a silent assertion of her continued control. I met her gaze, my eyes now clear, unwavering, and filled with a pain that transcended any physical ailment. "Clara," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so, "Dr. Bennett says he found sedatives in my blood. He wants to test the pills." Clara froze. The carefully constructed mask of concern fractured, revealing a flicker of raw panic in her eyes, quickly followed by a flash of furious anger. For a fleeting second, the beautiful, composed daughter I thought I knew vanished, replaced by a stranger, cold and venomous. She recovered quickly, though, her expression smoothing over, though a faint tremor lingered in her hands. "Sedatives?" she scoffed, her laugh brittle, too forced. That's impossible, Mom. They're just vitamins, memory support. You're being paranoid. This is your condition. She shot a quick, nervous glance at Dr. Bennett, who remained impassive, his gaze fixed on her. No, Clara, I stated, my voice gaining strength, resonating with a newfound authority. They're not vitamins, and this isn't my condition. Dr. Bennett confirmed it. There are sedatives in my blood, and he needs to test those pills right now. I pointed a shaky finger at the blue bottle on the table. Clara's hand instinctively reached for the bottle, her fingers closing around it, as if to shield it from scrutiny. Her eyes, narrowed and hard, pierced mine. You're confused, Mom. Still, this is just your paranoia acting up. You're imagining things. She clutched the bottle tighter, pulling it closer to her chest. A silent confession. A searing pain, sharper than any physical ache, tore through me. The realization that my own daughter had willingly, knowingly poisoned me, slowly and systematically, was a wound that would never fully heal. But with that pain came a formidable strength. The confusion was gone. The fear had transformed into a burning fury. Get out, Clara, I commanded, my voice resonating with an unshakable power, echoing in the sterile room. My eyes, no longer dulled by sedatives, blazed with a fierce, unwavering light. And take those pills with you, because I never want to see you or those blue pills ever again. The door clicked shut behind Clara, a hollow sound that seemed to seal away a piece of my past. The air in the room, heavy with the weight of her deceit, slowly began to clear. With Clara gone, a strange sense of quiet descended, allowing the raw emotions to surface. Heartbreak, rage, and a profound sense of violation churned within me, but alongside them, a fierce determination bloomed. My hand, no longer trembling uncontrollably, reached for the call button. The red light glowed, summoning Nurse Miller, who appeared moments later, her face reflecting a mix of curiosity and concern. Everything all right, Mrs. Eleanor? She asked softly. Nurse, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I need to speak to Dr. Bennett immediately. It's urgent. Within minutes, Dr. Bennett returned, his expression still serious. Mrs. Eleanor, what can I do for you? I took a deep breath, marshaling my thoughts, arranging the pieces of the puzzle that had so cruelly fallen into place. Doctor, I began, my voice clear and firm. Those blue pills Clara was giving me. She insisted they were memory support vitamins. But they weren't. They were sedatives, weren't they? That's what you found in my blood. Dr. Bennett's gaze was compassionate but unwavering. Yes, Mrs. Eleanor, the levels were significant. She told me I had early onset dementia, I continued, the words spilling out now, a dam breaking. She said she took me to 3 neurologists, including a Dr. Hayes, who all confirmed the diagnosis. But I never saw any doctors. I never discussed dementia. I only started feeling this way, this confusion and fog, after I started taking those pills. I recounted the fabricated incidents Clara had described to Mrs. Albright, the hidden camera on her phone, the unsettling conversations I'd overheard about other living arrangements, and moving faster than planned. Every detail, every chilling memory emerged with stark clarity. Dr. Bennett listened patiently, his hand occasionally stroking his chin, his eyes thoughtful. When I finished, a long silence stretched between us. Mrs. Eleanor, he finally said, his voice gentle, based on your improved cognitive function since you've been off those substances and your ability to recall and articulate these events so clearly, I can confirm that a diagnosis of dementia, particularly early onset, is now very unlikely. The confirmation, while a profound relief, also ignited a fresh wave of pain and fury. Clara had not only stolen my memories, but had tried to steal my very identity, my independence, my future. She had systematically poisoned me, intending to render me a helpless shell, all under the guise of loving care. The reality of her betrayal was a physical ache, a deep, lacerating wound. My own daughter. The thought was unbearable, yet undeniable. These sedatives you found, I pressed, needing to hear it unequivocally. They're definitely not vitamins, right? This is serious. Dr. Bennett nodded grimly. Definitely not vitamins, Mrs. Eleanor. And yes, this is a very serious matter. Administering medication, particularly sedatives, without medical supervision and under false pretenses, especially to an elderly parent, is a criminal act. Just then, Nurse Miller re-entered the room. Her expression was solemn. Mrs. Eleanor, she said, looking directly at me, Dr. Bennett has contacted Adult Protective Services. They're on their way. We believe you are a victim of elder abuse. Elder abuse. The words hung heavy in the air, cold and clinical. My daughter was a criminal. The realization hit me with nauseating force, a visceral churn in my stomach. The loving, caring daughter image I had held for so long shattered into a million pieces. A short while later, Dr. Bennett returned with an update. I had my office check on Dr. Hayes, Mrs. Eleanor, he said, his voice grave. There is a neurologist by that name, but his office has no record of you ever being a patient. No appointments, no consultations, nothing. The final nail in the coffin of Clara's deception. The fabricated doctor, the fabricated diagnosis, the fabricated concern, it was all a monstrous lie. Shortly after, a woman with kind but firm eyes entered the room. Mrs. Eleanor, I'm Sarah Jenkins from Adult Protective Services. She introduced herself, extending a hand. She carried a notepad and, to my surprise, a small digital recording device, which she placed on the bedside table. I understand you have a very difficult story to tell, and we're here to listen. As I began to speak, the words flowed with an unexpected ease, fueled by the clarity of my mind and the burning need for justice. I recounted everything, from the first blue pill to the accusation of sedatives, from Clara's subtle manipulations to her outright lies. I spoke of the lost time, the fear, the growing suspicion, and the devastating realization. When I finished, a heavy silence filled the room. Sarah Jenkins clicked off her recorder, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. Mrs. Eleanor, she began, this is a truly egregious case. Do you have any idea what might have motivated your daughter to do this? I looked away, staring out the window at the unfamiliar hospital grounds. The question, though painful, was not difficult to answer. It had been gnawing at me, a bitter truth bubbling to the surface. Money, I said, the word a rasp in my throat. It always comes down to money, doesn't it? That my house, my savings, my life insurance policy. A tear finally escaped, tracing a hot path down my cheek. She wanted me out of the way. She wanted my life. The hospital room felt less like a cage and more like a sanctuary now, a place where truth was being meticulously assembled, piece by painful piece. The morning after my conversation with Sarah Jenkins, Dr. Bennett returned, his face unusually grave, carrying a heavy folder. He pulled up a chair, his expression confirming that the revelations were far from over. Mrs. Eleanor, he began, his voice low, the police conducted a search of your house last night. They found some concerning items. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of dread and anticipation. I braced myself. In a kitchen cabinet, behind some old dishes, Dr. Bennett explained, consulting notes on his tablet, they discovered 3 prescription bottles. The labels had been carefully peeled off, but one had a partial remnant of a name, clearly not yours. He paused, letting the implication sink in. They believe these bottles contained the sedatives found in your system. The police suspect they were prescribed to someone else and then repurposed for you. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. So, she hadn't even bought them legally under a false name. She had stolen them. From whom? The thought made me shudder. And there's more, Dr. Bennett continued, his voice heavy. In what appears to be Clara's old bedroom, they found a manila folder. Inside, there were several documents, Mrs. Eleanor. Forged power of attorney forms, bearing a signature that closely resembles yours, but with subtle inconsistencies that a forensic expert quickly identified as fraudulent. My breath hitched. Power of attorney. She wasn't just planning to move me to a facility. She was planning to take complete control of my finances, my life, rendering me utterly powerless. The depth of her malice was truly staggering. Also in that folder, he went on, his voice laced with disgust, were medical forms, declarations of your supposed incompetence, signed by doctors you've never met. It appears she was creating a paper trail to legally institutionalize you and gain full control of your assets. The sheer audacity, the meticulous planning of it all sent a chill down my spine. She had been building a case against me, against my sanity, brick by calculated brick. But perhaps the most chilling discovery, Bennett said, his voice dropping, were several brochures for memory care facilities. On them, Clara had made extensive handwritten notes, costs, admission requirements, visiting hours. It appears she was very close to making arrangements for your permanent placement. My vision blurred for a moment, not from confusion, but from a surge of overwhelming nausea. These were not just brochures. They were the blueprints for stealing my life, for burying me alive in a facility, forgotten and sedated. There's one more thing, Mrs. Eleanor, Dr. Bennett said, his tone shifting to something more legalistic. The police also found evidence of a joint bank account, opened in your name and Clara's, approximately 6 months ago. Since then, your Social Security checks have been deposited directly into that account. The blood drained from my face. 6 months. That was around the time the first memory support pills had arrived. That was when the subtle fog had begun. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying finality. She was stealing from me, I whispered, the words a raw, painful admission. All this time, she was stealing my money. Dr. Bennett nodded. The police are building a very strong case, Mrs. Eleanor. With the forged documents, the illicit substances, and the financial discrepancies, Clara is facing multiple felony charges. The door opened again and Sarah Jenkins from Adult Protective Services stepped in, her expression somber but resolute. Mrs. Eleanor, she said, her voice firm, I have an update. Clara has been arrested. A gasp escaped my lips, a mix of shock and a strange, bitter relief. The police apprehended her at your house, Sarah continued. She was attempting to remove a box containing some of your jewelry and important financial documents. They caught her red-handed. I closed my eyes, picturing my daughter, caught in the act, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. The image brought a twisted sense of justice. She's facing serious charges, Mrs. Eleanor, Sarah explained. Elder abuse, fraud, theft. Depending on the specifics, she could be looking at a significant prison sentence, potentially 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years. The number hung in the air, a stark judgment. My own child, facing such a fate. The pain of it was profound, a wound that would forever scar my heart. Yet there was also a cold, hard satisfaction. She had tried to steal my life, and now she would lose her own freedom. There's something else you should know, Mrs. Eleanor, Sarah added, her voice softening slightly. During their preliminary interviews, the police learned that Clara had been telling your neighbors, including Mrs. Albright, some very disturbing things about you. She claimed you were becoming increasingly violent and unpredictable, that you were prone to outbursts and irrational behavior. My mind reeled. Violent? Unpredictable? The absurdity of it was shocking. She was laying the groundwork, Sarah explained, to justify your institutionalization and any subsequent changes to your will or financial arrangements. She was attempting to portray you as a danger to yourself and others, making it easier to take control. On the final piece of her malicious design, she hadn't just intended to poison me into submission, she had intended to destroy my reputation, to ensure no one would believe me if I ever managed to break free from her insidious web. The calculating evil of it was breathtaking, a betrayal that ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital. Medically, I was stable, the sedatives having completely cleared from my system. Mentally, I was sharper than I had been in months, the last vestiges of the fog having lifted entirely. The neurological test had returned, definitive and unambiguous. No signs of dementia. My mind was sound, my memories intact, albeit scarred by Clara's betrayal. Sarah Jenkins, with her steady gaze and comforting presence, drove me home. As we pulled up to my familiar house, a yellow police tape still stretched across the front door. A stark, unwelcome barrier. It felt surreal, like stepping into a crime scene that was also my sanctuary. We can arrange temporary housing for you, Mrs. Eleanor, Sarah offered gently, until everything feels settled, until you feel safe. I shook my head, my resolve firm. No, Sarah, this is my home. I'm staying here. It was an act of defiance, a reclaiming of my space, my independence. I would not let Clara's actions drive me from the place I loved. Stepping inside, the house felt different. It was no longer a place of veiled threats and unsettling confusion. It was infused with a startling clarity, every shadow, every corner, now revealing the truth of Clara's insidious plot. I walked through the rooms, the air thick with memories, both cherished and horrifying. I saw my once beloved home through new eyes. The loose rug in the living room, which Clara had labeled a tripping hazard, now seemed harmless, a soft reminder of cozy evenings. The supposedly steep stairs, my once reliable pathway, felt sturdy beneath my feet. Her fabricated hazards were just that, fabrications designed to paint me as fragile and incompetent. In my bedroom, a pang of fresh hurt struck me. Several of my cherished family photographs, depicting Clara as a young child, smiling brightly, had been removed from their frames. She had begun to erase herself, not just from my future, but from my past, attempting to sever the very ties of our shared history. The hardest discovery, however, awaited me in the kitchen. As I tidied up, moving a stack of old cookbooks, something small and unassuming tumbled from behind them. A small, spiral-bound notebook, Clara's familiar neat handwriting on the cover. Mom's Progress. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a notebook for Dr. Hayes. This was her personal log. With trembling hands, I opened it. Each page was a chilling chronicle of my supposed decline, a systematic documentation of her poisoning. Entries meticulously detailed the dates, the doses of the blue pills, and her observations. Week 3, Mom forgot kettle again. Slight confusion, mild sedation. Good. Week 7, backyard incident. Disorientation increasing. Need to increase dosage slightly. Week 12, Mrs. Albright, concerned, told her about Dr. Hayes. Perfect cover. Week 16, starting to talk facilities. She's resistant. Must accelerate. Week 20, money transferred. POA almost ready. Maple Grove by July 1st looks promising. Maple Grove, the memory care facility. My stomach clenched. She had a deadline. She had a timeline for my complete incapacitation and institutionalization. The final entry, dated just days before my collapse, sent a wave of icy fury through me. Mom asking too many questions. Getting suspicious. Need to increase dosage dramatically. Move up Maple Grove timeline. No more delays. My heart pounded, a drum solo of rage and pain. Getting suspicious. That was the moment she had decided to administer a near-fatal dose, pushing me into unconsciousness. A last desperate act to secure her control. It wasn't just neglect. It was calculated malice, a cold-blooded attempt to erase me. Later that afternoon, the hospital phone rang. The operator's voice was crisp. Collect call from Clara, from the detention center. Will you accept? My breath hitched. I hesitated for a long moment, my finger hovering over the button. The images of the notebook, the forged documents, the cold, calculating entries flashed through my mind. This was not a daughter reaching out. This was a criminal. But I had to hear what she had to say. Yes, I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. Mom, oh Mom, thank God. Clara's voice, thick with feigned tears, filled my ear. You have to help me, Mom. This is all a huge misunderstanding. You know I'd never hurt you. They've got me here, in jail. You have to bail me out. Please tell them it was all a mistake. Tell them I was just trying to help you. Her voice escalated into a desperate plea, full of the same manipulative charm she had used to lull me into her trap. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. I saw your notebook, Clara, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. The one you kept hidden behind the cookbooks. All the dates, all the dosages, all the plans for Maple Grove by July 1st. And the last entry, about increasing the dosage because I was getting suspicious. A sudden sharp silence on the other end. The carefully constructed facade of distress shattered. When Clara spoke again, her voice was stripped bare, cold and brittle, revealing the true monster beneath. You were becoming a burden, Mom. You were getting old, expensive. And that house, those savings, they were just sitting there doing nothing. I deserved them. I worked hard. I had financial struggles you never cared about. It was my inheritance, just slightly accelerated. The raw entitlement, the complete lack of remorse struck me like a physical blow. "You're not my daughter anymore, Clara," I said, my voice trembling, not with fear, but with an immense, profound sorrow. The words tasted like ash, but they were true. The daughter I loved, the one I had raised, was gone, replaced by this cruel, calculating stranger. Goodbye, Clara. With a final, decisive click, I hung up the phone. My hand moved automatically to the settings, blocking all future calls from the detention center. The silence that followed was heavy, but for the first time in a very long time, it was a silence I truly welcomed. Life began to trickle back into my home, slowly, deliberately. The yellow police tape was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of normalcy. A few days after my return, a gentle knock sounded at the door. It was Mrs. Albright, her kind eyes clouded with a mix of sorrow and embarrassment. She clutched a small potted plant, a peace lily, symbolic and fragile. "Eleanor, dear," she began, her voice quivering slightly. "I came to apologize. I feel so terrible. All those things Clara said, about your memory, about you becoming difficult. I believed her. I truly thought I was doing the right thing by giving you space. I had no idea about the drugs, the abuse." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's horrific, Eleanor, truly horrific." I reached out, taking her hand. "Martha, you had no way of knowing." Clara was very convincing. She manipulated everyone, even me. That's what abusers do. The word abuser felt strange, heavy, yet undeniably true when applied to my own daughter. Clara hadn't just tried to steal my money. She had systematically isolated me, eroded my confidence, and stripped me of my dignity, all while masquerading as my loving caregiver. The realization hardened my resolve. A few weeks later, Sarah Jenkins called with an update on the legal proceedings. "The prosecutor reviewed all the evidence, Mrs. Eleanor," she explained. "The forged power of attorney, the medical reports, the bank records, and especially Clara's personal notebook outlining her plans. It's all incredibly damning. Clara's legal team tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor rejected it outright. They want to take this to a full trial." A full trial. It meant revisiting every painful detail, facing Clara in court, reliving the betrayal. A part of me, the part that craved peace, recoiled. But another part, the survivor, the woman who had fought her way out of a drugged haze, yearned for justice. "I want a trial, Sarah," I stated, my voice firm. "I want her to face what she did, and I want the world to know the truth about elder abuse." It was not just for me, I realized, but for all the silent victims whose voices were smothered by deceit. This was my fight, and I would not shy away from it. That afternoon, I made an appointment with my attorney. With a steady hand, I reviewed and revised my will. Clara's name, once prominently featured, was now meticulously removed. My assets, my home, my savings, they would now be divided between my two sons, who lived out of state and were as shocked and heartbroken by Clara's actions as I was, and several charities dedicated to supporting victims of elder abuse. It was a symbolic act, a severing of the final thread that bound me to her destructive path, and a profound statement of my newfound purpose. 6 months later, I sat in the hushed courtroom, a silent observer as justice unfolded. Clara, looking pale and gaunt in her prison uniform, sat beside her lawyer, her eyes darting nervously around the room, never quite meeting mine. The prosecutor laid out the case with chilling precision, detailing the forged documents, the financial theft, and the systematic poisoning. The most damning evidence, the nail in her coffin, was her own handwritten notebook. The chilling entries, read aloud, left no doubt as to her calculated intent. The judge's voice, somber and firm, echoed through the room. "Clara Reynolds, for the charges of elder abuse, fraud, and theft, I sentence you to 8 years in state prison." 8 years. The weight of the sentence settled over me. It wasn't triumph I felt, not entirely. It was a profound sense of closure, a deep, quiet exhale of relief. I was free. The following months were a journey of rediscovery. I started painting again, my canvases vibrant with colors I hadn't dared to use in years. I joined a book club, delighting in lively discussions and new friendships. And then there was Arthur, a kind, thoughtful man I met at a local art exhibition who made me laugh and look forward to each new day. He saw me, truly saw me, not as a victim, but as the strong, vibrant woman I was. One day a letter arrived, the prison postmark stark against the simple white envelope. Clara. My heart tightened, but I opened it. Her words were a carefully crafted apology, interspersed with subtle justifications. She still denied genuine wrongdoing, claiming she had only wanted to help me, to manage my affairs. She asked for my forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild our relationship. I read it once, then a second time, a wave of profound sadness washing over me. But the anger, the sharp sting of betrayal remained. Some wounds are too deep to heal, some betrayals too profound to forgive. With a sigh, I tore the letter into small pieces, letting them fall into the wastebasket like forgotten dreams. Arthur and I began planning a trip to Italy, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. The thought of wandering through ancient cities, savoring new flavors, and simply living filled me with an exhilarating sense of hope. This was a future I had thought was stolen from me, a joy I believed had been irrevocably lost. Sitting in my sunny living room, the scent of fresh paint faintly in the air, I reflected on the long, dark journey I had endured. I wasn't just a victim of elder abuse. I was a survivor, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live every single moment to its fullest. Clara had tried to make me disappear, to erase my mind and my existence. But she had failed. I was here. I was whole. And I would never, ever refuse to disappear again.